Happy New Year! Happy New Year! Welcome to Relationship Talk with Beth Lee and
Dan IT Guy.
Yes. And we hope you guys had a wonderful holiday, wonderful New Year, and stayed safe. Yes, that's the important thing, right?
Yeah.
Yes. It was snowing on New Year's Eve. And so we were kind of our friends, we were kind of in and out of the house, like running up and getting more beer and stuff, and at one point, Dan and I had to go home and let the dogs out and come back, and all the condensation or snow or whatever had frozen to the windshield, and I'm like, I don't know if I remember how to drive in this. So it was a little scary, but we made it.
Yeah, no big deal.
A little bit slick roads, but
just had her go over to the gas station and put in some antifreeze windshield wiper fluid, and we were good.
A little scary, but we didn't hit any deers, so that was good.
Thank God.
Yes, didn't see any that night. That was good.
Yeah. Interesting that we didn't see any.
We've been seeing them around a lot lately, so that's a little scary. But
yeah.
So, but we got back to the party and celebrated at midnight. Gave each other a little kiss.
Yes.
So that was good. It was fun.
It was a good time.
So I hope you guys had a wonderful New Year's Eve. It was good. Let's check the comments here. Destroyer. Hello. I got a new ear too. And we got Pop in the house. Hey, Pop.
What up, Pop?
Happy New Year's. Yes. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and get started. Last week, we talked about, we always talk about our email address and everything. Anyways, yeah, you guys know our email address. If you want to email us, feel free. I always forget that. There it is right there on the screen. And you can always email us, say hello, and ask questions or anything else that you want. If you like the channel and you'd like to subscribe, feel free to do that. And you might have noticed too that we've got a link in the comments for the book for Making Marriage Last by Beth Lee. So it's out on Amazon, discounted rate. So feel free to pick that up.
The correct price.
The correct price.
$15.99 instead of $33, which was insane. But
yeah.
That's a whole other bag of worms we'll get into another time.
Or not. Whatever. So last week we talked about positivity and having fun together. And those are two things that you really want to have in a marriage is, being positive with one another. Remember our ditch ride in Byron?
Yeah. I told her about that.
Yeah. That was down by the curve when you go around by the school, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we were recalling our ditch ride last year. Yeah, that was a fun time. First time I've ever driven in a ditch. That was a little scary.
Not my first rodeo, but we figured it out. That
kind of goes along with having fun together, just finding moments where you can laugh together. And even though something might be real serious in the moment,
deadly serious,
or scary in the moment, or super stressful in the moment, you can always find something positive about it and learn from it or grow from it, or just try and have fun in the moment,
Like the fact that I was completely calm and just told her, don't hit the brake.
Don't let off the gas.
Don't let off the gas. Step on the gas. Step on the gas. Just keep it moving.
I think my eyes were closed there for a short while. Like I didn't want to open my eyes.
I think it was when we were spinning.
Yeah, I don't remember us spinning. I think my eyes were closed when we were spinning.
Yeah, we were on 3 wheels when we were spinning. Yeah, we hit a drift and it picked up the front of the car and spun us around.
And of course, my instinct was tap the brake, and you're not supposed to do that. I found that out. So.
Yeah.
So driving back home on New Year's Eve, it was like, okay, there's people who've been, drinky drinks, and it's 1:30 in the morning, and it's kind of slick outside. So I think I'm just gonna go 30 and go very slowly around, because we had kind of the trifecta, because you've got drunks out on the road, you've got slick conditions, and you've got deers that like to jump out in front of your car. So I'm like, I'm just going to go 30 and,
You know it's dangerous.
Yes, we might need a warmer climate
I think so.
where we don't have deers jumping out in front of the car and ice all over the roads. That might be better. That might be a better thing for us.
Yeah, maybe.
But we always try to have fun together, no matter what we're doing. So, so we talked about that last week. We talked about being positive and being around people that that support you and support your marriage, and trying to be supportive of other people's marriages too. That's kind of a responsibility that you have with other people, is when even if you're struggling in your marriage, just reach out to other people and try and support them. One thing that we've kind of learned throughout the years is if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling kind of down, reach out to other people. Look up and out and try and reach out to other people, because when you're so focused on yourself and how you're feeling and how anxious you are or how depressed you are, you're focused solely on yourself. And the more you're focused on yourself, the more you're going to see your problems and your negativity, and the more down you're going to feel. So if you can look out to other people and help other people, it's going to make you feel a little bit better.
Yes.
You won't be so focused on yourself. You'll be reaching out.
It takes the focus off of you and puts it on other people, which is where it should be.
Yeah. And other couples can use your help. They can use your example. So I would suggest, if you're, struggling in your marriage, reach out to other couples and try and support each other.
Yeah, 100%.
That's what we do.
We try to.
So remain positive. But last week's homework, we asked you to sit down at some point during the week and just talk to each other about the positive things that you saw in your marriage, in your relationship last year, and only see the positives, only talk about positives. But we're all realistic, right? We all know that even though you're focusing on the positives, you're talking about positives with your spouse, you remember some of the negative things that you went through last year, and you can remember maybe some arguments that you had, and sometimes where maybe your relationship was a little rocky. And even though you're not voicing that out loud, this week, that's what we're going to be talking about. How do we start the new year by fixing some of those issues, or even just recognizing them, seeing what issues need to be worked on so that you can strengthen your marriage and make it last for a long time, because that's the whole goal.
Yep.
No one can live as an island. Exactly.
There you go.
Exactly. There's always somebody out there that you can help. Always. So we want to start the new year on the right track. Yes. Definitely. Yeah. So we're going to talk about some improvements that you can make with different issues, so this can be the best year of your marriage. We want you to look back this time next year and say, wow, this has been the best year of our marriage. That's something that Dan and I kind of talked about this weekend, was how this last year has been the best year of our marriage so far.
We've made more progress in our relationship this year than we have in 14 years of marriage.
16 years, yeah. Yeah, it's enlightening, where you can look back to where you were before and see all these struggles that you've gone through, and you can see where you're at now, and it's really beautiful to be able to do that.
Yes.
So what are some areas that you might be struggling in? How do you fix it? So we're going to talk about communication. We're going to talk about trust, respect, fighting fairly, intimacy, appreciating one another, remembering who it is that you're married, remembering happy moments, because all of those things, you may have issues with one or more of those things. So how do you fix those things? Communication is one of those big ones. I think it's one of those that it's probably the most important.
Oh, it's absolutely the most important part, because if you're not communicating, that's it's not a relationship. You have to relate in order to be in a relationship. That's part of communication.
Yeah. So how do you fix problems with communication? What are some of the problems with communication? It could be not understanding, like just misunderstanding some of your words. It could be a negative tone of voice. It could be
Anger,
yeah,
rage, could be a lot of things.
yeah.
It could be sadness, it could be hurt.
It could be talking on top of one another or not listening, right? Not listening with your heart.
Yeah.
That's a big part of communication, is listening. Communication doesn't just focus on talking. It focuses on listening. And when you're in a relationship with someone, you have to listen with your heart so that you can hear the feelings behind the words, because people don't just speak just to talk. They speak because there's feelings there. And once you realize what those feelings are, then you're able to have a deeper understanding of who you're married to. And it could lessen the arguments that you have in the future.
100%.
I mean, I do remember we had first gotten married and we were having a pretty bad argument. And Dan made some comment like, you're being such a bitch right now, or something like that. And I just let loose. I think I went from 0 to 1,000 at that point. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And we ended up talking about it later on. And, I said, it was probably like 3 weeks later, we had already resolved the argument, but we talked about it later. And I said, one of the things that when I grew up, I had a brother that his nickname for me was Dumb Bitch. So, and the family, like my home life when I grew up, we were sarcastic with each other all the time. You had to develop a thick skin to live in my family. Like you really did. So, it just kind of, I just got used to him calling me that all the time. And, it didn't occur to me that until later on in my life that, how offended I was by that, but when Dan had said it to me, it hurt really bad, and so just being able to explain that to him and just tell him that's one of those trigger words, that just, it hurts really bad. So please, you can say anything else, just please don't say that. That really hurts. And once he realized the reason why, he was able to understand how I was feeling. And
you don't want to hurt the person that you're planning on spending the rest of your life with,
Yes.
You never want to hurt someone who's as important as your spouse,
Yes.
It happens. It's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that you figure out through communication how to, resolve the issue completely.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a bookend kind of, you have, the beginning, it's an argument or whatever, but then in the middle you start to hopefully utilize some tools, maybe a 2-minute rule or something like that to try to calm yourselves down, or maybe take a little space. And then by the end, you guys should both have some kind of an idea of what the resolution to the problem is.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to come together, resolve the problem, close the door, and leave it.
Yes.
Let it go.
Yes.
Put it behind you.
Yes.
That's the hard part.
Yeah. And, sometimes that, you want to be able to resolve the issue when the argument is done. You want to be able to resolve it, and being able to put that little package away and not bring it out again. Sometimes that's hard for people to do, and I still remember that the very first argument that we got into when we got together, and it was a humdinger. Let me tell you, it was bad. And I still remember I think we were on the road to resolving things. And I just remember sitting there and I had started crying because I realized we had this perfect little egg, this perfect little relationship. And some of the words that we had used with each other had cracked that perfect little egg. And I realized it's not perfect anymore. And, there's a lot of words that we can use that really hurt each other.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't take those words back. You can apologize for them, but the words are already out there. And, it's hard to take words back once they're out there.
Yeah.
And, it's sometimes you hear those words over and over again in your head. It's just not good. I like Pop's phrase here: forgive your partner and move ahead. Love conquers all.
There you go.
Yes. I think a lot of people need to learn how to forgive people.
Yeah.
I think that's a big one too. Learning how to forgive. Like
maybe even forgive themselves so that they can forgive other people. A lot of times people can't forgive themselves, so they're not willing to try to forgive someone else.
Yeah. And what does it take for you to forgive people?
Mm-hmm.
It's, some people have a hard time forgiving.
Yeah.
But like the basis, I think, of communication is trust.
Yes.
There's a certain level of trust that you have to have with your spouse in order to communicate really well, because you have to be able to trust the reaction that your spouse is going to give you when you say things. And, what were you going to say?
You're trying to be vulnerable, and especially as a man, it's not easy sometimes, but that's not an excuse either. And that's why I always try to be that way, but it doesn't, nobody's perfect, but
yeah, we had to learn how to
ratchet it down quite a bit. Our fighting styles we're way too similar on a lot
Oh my
of
gosh.
things.
Yes.
When it comes to fighting, she knows the daggers, I know the daggers, she knows the swords, I know the swords, and we were not afraid to use them at first.
Yeah.
That's not a good way to treat your relationship or the other person in the relationship.
No. Because there's certain words that you can use with one another that cut deeper than others, and yeah.
Yeah. And you know what they are.
Yeah.
You learn what they are, and it's up to you to not use that information against that other person, because that's just brutal.
Yeah. Yeah. But you have to be able to trust everyone. You have to be able to trust one another.
For sure.
You have to be able to trust each other with your hearts. You have to be able to open yourselves up to each other, because once you're honest, once you're open and honest, then you're able to fully communicate with one another and communicate who you really are, you know. Forgiving yourself is the key. Yep. Amen. Yes. Hey, Tim. How are you? Happy New Year. Oh, that's so nice. Respect is another one. We just recently, we had a few conversations with a couple people about respect. And I hate to say that respect is earned, because I think some people have already earned it based on what they've done for you or just who they are, I grew up with a dad who was an alcoholic and an addict. Wasn't around a whole lot, but I respected the man because he gave me his name. I respected the man because he worked his ass off for his family. I didn't like some of his behavior, for sure, but I respected the man. And, there's just nothing that I wouldn't have done to help him out. I had immense respect for him because he was my dad, simply because he was my dad. I respected him. And I think that is lost on a lot of people, that they seem to forget that, there's a certain level of respect that people have already earned simply because of who they are. And I think that's gone lost a little bit. This man here, I have immense respect for Dan. The amount of work that he does for our family is incredible. When our kids were younger, I was very, very quick to step in when I heard disrespect to him, and remind them he works his ass off for this family. You will have some respect for him, because he works very hard, and he's everything.
She's the same way. She works very, 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 very hard. She's been writing books. She was teaching our kids. Everything. She took care of everything. Literally. I was working. I can't take care of everything. I gotta go to work. And at that time, especially, I was out of town. I'm out in New Mexico. I'm 8.5 hours away.
Yeah.
And she held down the fort, kept everything rolling. We never had a problem. And I have a huge amount of respect for you for that.
Can't make me cry. All right.
You didn't convince me.
Anyways, having respect for one another. When you get into an argument with one another, there's certain times we know that respect kind of goes out the window. It's one of those things where I'm so mad, I don't really care. But keeping that mindset of he is the man of this house and he is what he's done for our family, I have to keep that in mind, because I don't want to disrespect him. I don't want him to disrespect me. And so our fighting style has changed because of that. So when the conversation kind of starts to go awry, then one of us will shut it down and say, I don't think we can talk about this right now. And one of us will leave the room, and we'll come back together a little while later and talk it out when we're calm.
Yeah.
And when we can be respectable to one another. Because it's just not good to have that conversation go off track, and end up
hurting one of us or both of us or
yeah.
all of us. You gotta watch what you say.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm terrible. I'm awful. I'm just gonna say that.
He's not. He's very kind.
I can be. And I try really hard not to be. But yeah, it's difficult sometimes,
It's very hard to make this man angry. I'm just going to tell you that. I'm good at it. Don't get me wrong. I'm good at it.
Oh, she's got the big red button. Believe me. She knows which button to push.
But that kind of leads us into fighting fairly, because, we mentioned in the book a lot about fighting fairly and writing out your ground rules. You don't even have to write them out. Just have those ground rules set up for fighting fairly. And yes, make up your ground rules, because
and stick to them.
Yes.
Because as long as you're consistent with it, it will help. I have no question. It will help.
Mm-hmm.
It forces you to calm down for a second and listen to what the other person's saying. Now, don't get me wrong. The first couple of times that you go back and forth where you're passing something and timing each other for 2 minutes or however whatever works for you guys. The first couple of times you're going to be petty.
Yeah.
Because you're still in Petty Roosevelt mode. You're still rocking. It's going to happen. But the third time, the fourth time, all of a sudden things start to calm down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you get to kind of sit and listen while the other person's talking, it helps you, helps them. It's just a huge help. It's a diffuser.
Mm-hmm.
And something that we use a lot. We haven't used it as much recently as we have in the past, but last year we definitely used it a lot because we were trying to get on the same page, and that's not always easy when you've been, she's been watching over the kids, and she's got to be the parent, and I got to be the parent, and you get to a point where you go, okay, we're not parents anymore. We're not. We're two people that have to get along
in the same house,
in the same
room,
and you have to sit down and go, okay, what are the new rules?
Yeah.
And one of those new rules that we both agreed to is no more parenting. In other words, it's easy to get, because you're so used to doing that.
Yeah.
It's easy to do that to someone else.
Yeah, I was the first few months after our youngest went into the Navy, I was still in that mom mode where I'm like, okay, this is what needs to be done today, and da 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 da, and I need you to do this and this and this, and he's like, hey, I'm not one of the kids, and I'm like, I know. Well, you're talking to me like I'm one of the kids. Okay, how? And I had to have him tell me how do I sound, because I didn't hear it. And, you get stuck in that mindset of, I'm the mom, I've got things I've got to have done, and everything's on a schedule. And now that I saw that, now that he's able to point that out to me in a kind manner, which is, the way you pointed it out to me was spectacular. It truly was, because I didn't see it. I didn't hear it. And when you were able to bring it up to me in a gentle way and
it wasn't just you. It was me too.
Yeah.
I was guilty of it. There's no question.
Yeah.
And I just sat there, and it was actually after one of the times that I had done it that I sat there and went, why the hell am I doing that to her? She's 52 freaking years old.
I'm only 51. If I still have 3 more weeks, I'm not 52 yet. He is.
I'm only 51. Years old. She's 51 for a couple
I'm holding on. It's one of those things, though, that you don't see it and you don't realize that you're even doing it, and you have to have somebody point it out to you, because you get so, and we were arguing a lot at that point. We were like bickering, not arguing really, but bickering.
Yeah.
And I couldn't put my finger on, why are we bickering so much? It's because we were parenting each other still. And that's what it was.
Anyone who's a parent out there has to understand.
That's what it was.
Maybe we didn't put enough distance in between us in that parenting thing when we were actually parenting. But at the end of the parenting was like, okay, we're still parenting each other. We need to stop this crap. Because we're gonna kill each other if we don't.
Yeah, and that's why we were bickering so much. So once we figured that out, it was like, oh, we can just be married to each other. We can just be a couple.
Yeah.
This is awesome. This is amazing. This is really good. What'd your dad say? Dan is all or nothing. Yes. I've seen him mad. Yes. Oh my. He has improved immensely.
I don't get mad. I just get all stabby.
Not with me.
Not with you.
With fans.
Well, that was not, yeah.
That wasn't really stabby. That was more of like.
That was more just an explosion happened and stuff.
Fan blade fell off.
Got broken.
Somehow it fell
accidentally.
off. Accidentally. On purpose. But it's good. It's all right. It's good.
You know what? I got it out. I feel better.
That's all that counts. Yes. But fighting fairly, writing down some of those rules that you have, like.
We need a new fan anymore.
We did. Not that way, but yeah. Anyways.
Fighting fairly, yes.
So, but writing down some of those rules that you have for one another, and your rules might only work for you. I know some of the rules that we have for each other, like not bringing up past things, things that have happened in the past, that works for us. Doing the 2-minute rule works for us. not using verbal daggers. We're still working on that.
Yeah.
Because that's just something they just slip right off the tongue so easily, but we're still working on that.
Many, many years of practice.
Yes. Trying not to use trigger words. That's something we still try to work on.
That is a good point, actually. Trigger words are anything that's going to cause the other person to feel hurt or feel slighted or feel
defensive,
any kind of like bad energy.
Yeah.
And you gotta learn to get away from those trigger words and just don't use them.
Yeah. And watching your tone of voice, watching certain words have a different connotation. They might have a negative connotation, like saying to somebody, oh, you look like you have a good eye for bargains. That's a good way of saying it. Telling somebody, oh, you're pretty cheap. That's not.
Nice job, cheap ass.
There's different ways of saying things. So sometimes you have to watch how you say it.
You're so frugal.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, exactly. So watch the connotation. One thing that Dan used to do when we got married was he would say, well, I never do that, or I never say that. And I'm like, really? Because I can tell you 5 times, I can count on 5 times on my hand here when you did that last week. And it was like the always and never statements. He would use those all the time when we were first married. And I'm like, how about we not use those 2 words, like always and never? How about we just throw those words in the garbage and not use them? Because do you really never ever do this? Or do you always do this? I don't think so. So just taking those words out of our vocabulary, that was a good thing. But yeah, so fighting fairly, try and write those rules down for yourselves and look over them sometimes, especially after an argument, and see how you did. Did I follow the rules? Even boxing matches have rules. And not to say that your marriage is a boxing match, but it is a verbal sparring match. So it's similar, you're both taking out the gloves and polishing them off and putting them on. So
we're both trying to be right. It gotta be right.
It's important to remember, though, during arguments, there's not a winner. If there's an argument going on, yeah, you might have gotten your point across, but how hurt is the other person?
Yeah.
And there's no winner. So you're both losing. So you have to throw out that, I'm going to win this argument. There is no winner.
If you're causing harm to the other person, what's the win? What did you win?
Right.
I mean, a divorce lawyer? I don't know.
I hope
Let's
not.
see what's behind door number 3. Shall we?
What is that game? Let's make a deal.
Let's make a deal.
Yeah, behind door number 3 is a donkey. That's not good.
A donkey.
Another big part of marriage that some people have issues with is intimacy. And that can be physical intimacy. It can be emotional intimacy. And before you can have the physical intimacy really start working for you, you have to have the emotional intimacy. And that part is where your soul is connecting with another soul. It's where what your partner's thinking just by looking at them. That's the emotional intimacy. Because I know that, like, especially after arguments, I can't have physical intimacy until the emotional intimacy is back together.
I would say that's probably the majority of women.
Yeah.
Probably the majority of men too.
Yeah. Because I don't think we've ever done makeup sex.
I mean,
we've tried, but there's no emotional intimacy there, so it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
It feels wrong. It just feels wrong. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm just an idiot. I don't know.
I wouldn't say that, but that's okay. So emotional intimacy, you want to make sure that you're connecting with one another. And, we started a long time ago where we took that time every night after dinner and, 10, 15 minutes, sometimes a half an hour, depending on what we needed, just to talk to each other about what was going on during the day, or even just to laugh together.
It's a good practice to get into.
Yeah, especially if, and we understand, like, if you've got little ones, that they're demanding of your time, and
Oh, yeah.
you've got to feed them and then put them down and then change them and then give the baths and all this stuff. And it's a lot. And so your time together might just be right when you put the baby down, and you get 10 or 15 minutes alone with each other before you have to go to bed.
Yeah.
And get a couple hours sleep or something. But taking that time every day and trying to make that a priority in your marriage, it's really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Just to be able to connect with one another just for a few minutes every day and keep that going. Because even, as the kids get older, they get more involved with school or sports and things. And it is hard to find that time to connect with one another. And you have to make that a priority. This is the person you're hopefully going to be with for the rest of your life. And you want to make sure that you're making that a priority.
Yes.
Right, Lillers? Our dog is staring at us.
She was trying to lick my hand.
It's not ice cream time yet.
Not quite, buddy. Sorry.
We're emotionally intimate with our dog.
Baby girl.
Anyways, appreciating one another and saying thank you to one another. That's something that a lot of people miss.
Yeah.
They don't appreciate one another, and it's sad.
Yeah.
You hear people talking out in stores and stuff, and we heard it a lot over the holidays, just people not being very kind to one another.
Not very appreciative of each other.
Yeah.
For sure.
Ordering their spouse around in a store, or not saying thank you, not recognizing who it is they're married to.
Calling each other names and all kinds of stuff.
Yelling.
Granted, it was in a packed store, and I'm sure you guys understand. It was, a hour-long, 45-minute long line?
Yeah, and that was just in the line.
Register? Goodness.
Yeah, and so, we heard quite a few conversations, and some of them were nice, some of them not so nice, and I thought there was going to be a brawl at one point, but between one guy and his wife, and it's sad to see that that people are not respecting one another, especially out in public. I mean, if they're doing that out in public, what are they doing behind closed doors?
Jeez.
That's a little scary. But remember who it is you married. We always try to keep in mind the little kid that we met, that we first met.
Yep. Thankfully, we met each other when we were 7.
Yeah.
So we have a really good picture of who we really were.
Yeah.
And that's a big reason why I was not afraid to move out to Arizona and ask you to marry me. Because I knew you were.
Yeah.
So we grew up together. I got lucky.
But just remembering who it is you married, and remembering that you may have stress that you're going through in your relationship. You may have struggles. You might have a lot of issues going on, but this is the same person that was so excited to see you come down the aisle in that white dress. And, this is the person that spent all that time making all those plans and doing all those little things just to make the wedding day special for you. Keep that in mind. Remember those happy moments, because we tend to forget those. We tend to, those negatives take hold, and we seem to forget. And so try, I would say over the next week, try and remember those happy times.
If you've never, if you don't, most people I would think would have seen a picture of their significant other as a kid.
I would hope
it's
so.
not a bad idea to keep a hold of a picture of them when they were kids, so that you can look at it and realize that's who this person is, because that's who they are deep down inside. That little boy who's scared and shy and doesn't want to, go to the bathroom in front of strangers and all kinds of,
And that little girl who's very, very shy, that didn't want to open up to anybody. That's who I was. I was super shy when I was little. And to a point I still am. I'm like, it's a miracle you're even seeing me talking on YouTube, because I'm actually very shy in person. So, just I open up around, once I get to know people, but I'm actually very, very shy. But we have a picture, we have a photo album that I had put together when we first got together, and it has each page has pictures of, Dan on one side, me on the other, and it's like starting out when we were babies, and then like when we first met, and just kind of as we grew up, and it's, Dan's picture, my picture, like each page as we've grown. And I would suggest you find pictures of you and your spouse and put them in a photo album, or put them in a frame that, like one of those dual frames, you on one side, him on the other, and
try to find the best times that you ever had and put those pictures in that book.
Yeah.
And then find the next to the best times you ever had and put those in that book. And then if you're really bold, some of the worst times you ever had.
Oof, I don't think I have pictures of that.
You never know. If you do have pictures from that time, put them in the book.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't hurt to remember that.
Yeah.
Because we all go through our struggles. We all go through our messes, Life is always is going to be a mess at some point. And you just got to clean it up.
Yeah. Keep moving forward through it. And that's where hope really comes in.
Yeah.
Is, having hope for your future, and having hope that you can make it through any struggles that you're going through. I would hope that, this is the beginning of a new year. This is where you can look back and you can see some of the parts of last year where you struggled a little, and you can make your improvements. You can start out with yourself and think about, how can I make improvements to myself so that I can be a better wife? How can Dan improve himself so he can be a better husband? And that's a daily thing. That's not something that ever stops. Once you stop trying and stop working, your marriage stops.
Yep.
It's something that is, you're constantly doing things for one another. You're constantly trying to improve. You're constantly
learning new things.
Yeah. Putting everything into your marriage so that it can be better and better. So homework this week, think about areas in which you're struggling. Maybe it's an area that we didn't even talk about tonight, but think about areas that you might be struggling in, and talk to your spouse about how you can improve those areas. And I know this is going to sound really corny to do, but please do it. I want you to face one another and hold hands and tell each other, I am rededicating myself to you and to our marriage. I want this to be our best year yet. I will work hard every day to improve myself and our relationship. I promise to do my part to make our marriage last. Doing something like that is making that promise to one another out loud, is a really big step forward in overcoming struggles.
Yeah.
Dan and I have said things like this to each other constantly throughout our marriage, and it's
people
not...
make fun of us because pretty much every one of our cards is a book, but
yeah,
it allows us to say things that we don't, maybe that we take for granted, or that you don't always think of, that you think of it and then it's like, oh, I can't say anything because she went to the store, and I'm bad about it. I need to write it down or something, otherwise I forget.
Yeah.
And there's times I just forget, and then it comes back and I'm like,
That's one of the things that I love is that every card is like a love letter, and we're able to express those words to each other, and saying something meaningful to one another, where you're holding each other's hands. It's like making another vow to one another, where you're expressing to one another, I promise you I will improve myself. I promise I'm going to work hard for this. And saying it out loud and the other person hearing it, it makes a huge difference. It makes a huge, huge difference. Laying out goals for the future is the way to improve.
Yep.
Stop living in the past. It happened, you learned, and now it's time to grow.
Amen, brother.
And that leads us to, thank you, Eric. That leads us to our topic for next week, which is going to be setting goals for your future, setting goals together, because marriage can be much more successful when you're setting goals together. That's
And
one of the
actively
aims.
working toward those goals.
Mhm.
You know, making progress every week, and maybe even checking in on each other every week and saying, hey, you know, how's this going? Have you noticed that I've tried to do this or that?
Mhm.
I'm just checking in with you to make sure that you're seeing my progress, you know?
Yeah.
And you do the same for your spouse, you know?
Mhm. Yep. So that's our show for today. So I hope you guys really enjoyed it. I know it was a little toned down and everything, but
This one was a little more off the cuff. We've been trying to do a little more
ad lib
and we've been trying to do more ad lib for sure.
and not read everything.
Not
Yeah, we
read
don't
everything,
wanna read
because I'm terrible at reading. Don't get me wrong. I read at an extremely high level. I can read like a son of a gun. But when I'm reading and then get pulled away to talk about something and then go back to it, I forget where I'm at. I just do. It's just part of my dyslexia. It is what it is.
Yeah. Anyways, you guys have a wonderful week, and we will see you next time. And I can't wait to talk to you guys again. We love this.
We're looking forward to a great 2024 and lots of change probably this year. And hopefully a lot of that change will be us growing even closer.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I can read your mind. I know you want to kiss me right now. I can read it. Anyways, on that note, we'll go ahead and say goodbye. We love you guys. Thank you so much. We will see you next week.